in the news recently, first of all, we do not see a lot of news coverage about conflict from the Northeast. And when it does happen, people are not aware about the context in which it is happening. People are not even aware about the history. So there was a violence that broke out in the Assam Mizoram border. What can you tell us about this?
Okay, I'll address your second question before I address your first comment. The Assam Mizoram border and all the borders in the Northeast have been demarcated with the British advent in the region. And these are colonial legacies. The boundaries are colonial legacies of what the British left us. And as we've seen in a lot of places around the world, including on the Northwest frontier as well, that they weren't really good at it. And the same way they weren't really good at cutting borders in the Northeast. It was very simple for them in their head. They cut the hills out and they cut the plains out. So there's a lot of conflict on a lot of the borders, state borders in the Northeast. So this is not exactly very unusual. Of course, we are sitting here in, you're in Bangalore, I'm in Delhi. The rest of India, has not had the Northeast in its collective imagination ever. And there are many reasons for that. And I think that is something that every individual who's concerned about the nation should think and ask themselves that why is it that the Northeast is not in our imagination? Why is it that we don't know much about it? So coming to your question, the same way, this is not an extraordinary border dispute. These kind of border disputes have been happening for ages, and they've been happening on all the borders. Now with the Assam and Mizoram border, it's a fairly long border. It's, I think, about 165 kilometers. And as you know, Mizoram is hilly, and cultivation is difficult. A lot of industry is difficult because the majority of Mizoram is mountainous. But having said that, Mizoram historically was known as the Lushai Hills, which was a district of Assam. And when they drew the boundary, which was a notification in 1875, it segregated these areas. Now, all these regions are dominated by multiple different tribes. We have to understand India's tribal identity before we understand the Northeast. Now, these tribes sometimes also interwarring tribes. So it's not as if, historically all these tribes have been friendly. Not necessarily, But after the border was cut in 1875, there was also another demarcation in 1933. So the argument goes, to explain it very simply to you, that Mizoram feels that Assam follows the 1933 demarcation, and they want them to follow the 1875 one, and that is the area of conflict. But from I haven't been able, because of the pandemic, to travel to the Northeast, though all my work is largely based on field work. It's not a region that you can understand by reading books. It's not a region that you can understand by watching the news. It's a region where you have to spend a lot of time. You have to be on the ground because the minuter, the smaller details are very difficult for us to comprehend because of the tribal identities, because of the languages, because of culture and traditions that we haven't been exposed to. So now on the ground, the news is that this is not really a problem of the BEFR, which is the Bengal Eastern Frontier Regulation, which was the Act of 1873, which demarcated these areas. This is more to do with the fact that they need plain land to cultivate. So a lot of the tribes come down from the hills in Mizoram because it's difficult to cultivate in the mountainous region, and that causes clashes because that land is used for cultivation, which the Assamese side believes historically belongs to them and is for them for cultivation. Also, this is a very, very precarious area. There's Kachar and all. these are traditionally very conflicted areas. There's a lot of smuggling that happens through these areas. There's a lot of timber mafia in these areas. So, not elaborate too much because we're limited on time. The ground reality might be different from what we might be hearing. Of course, the reaction of the Mizoram police with the shootout might, in my opinion, have been very aggressive and unnecessary. But this is a problem that may have historical roots, but this incident is not something that is rooted in historicity. This incident has to do with what is happening on ground right now, which is the fight for plain land, which is good land that can be cultivated. This is maybe there is an influence of the timber mafia, of the smugglers that operate in these areas. But there is another angle to this, which I will explain as we go on.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.